West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Carol, you and Philip sat down with the former president for 2.5 hours of interviews. And I want to play part of the interview for the first time. It's about 5 minutes long, but you ask him about the January 6th and the insurrection, but it's an important part, so let's play that.
What did you hope they would do when you said go up there and stop this?
Well, I heard that people wanted to go down to, that wasn't my rally per se. There were a lot of people that spoke. Yeah. They had rallies the night before. They had speakers all over the city. You had hundreds of thousands of people. I would venture to say, I think it was the largest crowd I've ever spoken before. It went from that point, which is almost at the White House, to beyond the Washington Monument. It was, and wide. And
but if you could have waited,
and it was a loving crowd too. By the way, there was a lot of love. I've heard that from everybody. Many people have told me that was a loving crowd. And it was too bad. It was too bad that got that they did.
There were just some.
But my statement.
But Mr. President, I apologize. What we're trying to understand is. Not blame, not castigate.
No, I understand.
We want to understand, what did you want when you said go up there? What would you have dreamed?
I would have said that you will show not to go in, although they were ushered in by the police. I mean, in all fairness, the Capitol Police were ushering people in. The Capitol Police were very friendly. They were hugging the kids. You don't see that, but there's plenty of tape on that too. Because the Capitol Police were. That's the way it is. But personally, what I wanted is what they wanted. They showed up just to show support, because I happen to believe the election was rigged at a level like nothing has ever been rigged before. There's tremendous proof. Statistically, it wasn't even possible that he won. I mean, things such as if you win Florida and Ohio and Iowa, there's never been a loss. There was a loss.
And did you need better lawyers? Because they took it to court, but they didn't give enough evidence to convince the judges.
I needed better judges. The Supreme Court was afraid to take it. Don't forget, if you take all of everything out, take all of the dead people that voted, and there were thousands of them, by the way. We have lists of, obituaries, etc. If you take the illegal immigrants that voted, if you take the Indians that got paid to vote in different places, we had Indians getting paid to vote. Many different things. All election changing, not just, 12 people. I mean, all, because they were all very close. It's only in 5 places. If you take that, forget all of that. It's massive numbers, but forget all of that. If you take all of that, just look at one thing. The legislatures of the states did not approve all of the things that were done for those elections. And under the Constitution of the United States, they have to do that. And the Supreme Court, they didn't find fact. Don't forget, they didn't say, well, we disagree. They said, we're not going to hear the case. I'm very disappointed in the Supreme Court.
What do you think they were afraid of?
I guess they thought that it would be violent, maybe. And it was violent the other way, perhaps. I don't know. But I guess they thought that it would be violent. But the Supreme Court of the United States, in the Constitution, it says you can't have local politicians setting the rules. And they set the rules. Early voting, this voting, ballots, many, many different things. And these were Democrats going to Republican, with the exception of Nevada, which was a Democrat legislature. And by the way, they did for the most part approve, but they had things that they didn't approve. But the other ones had very little done, almost nothing. So they were setting illegally all of these rules, regulations, everything. Poll watchers who were absolutely brutalized and thrown out. We had no poll watchers allowed in buildings for days. Okay? It was an illegal, corrupt election, as bad as a third world country. Okay. So with that, the judges just would not rule. We had...
Well, can I have one more beat on that? If you had bad judges, that's like 86 bad judges. Were they afraid? Some of them were people you appointed.
No, that's true. I'm not saying. I appointed them, and I was very disappointed in them.
I mean, there's so many. It's fascinating that I said this. This is like listening to Nixon drunk rambling, except he's not drunk. He's just rambling, and that he still is holding on to all these lies. The idea that poll watchers were brutalized, but there was love, nothing but love, and the police just ushered in these loving people into the Capitol on the day of the attack is sickening. I mean, it's stunning. This is this man was president of the United States. Hart, I don't even know what to really ask about it, but what was he doing during the attack? I mean, you have reporting in this book about he was unreachable.
Anderson, our reporting shows that the president, during the attack, was sitting in front of the television watching it unfold. At first, he was happy. He liked seeing hundreds, thousands of his own supporters with MAGA flags, with Trump MAGA hats on their heads, storming the Capitol in a show of force. He enjoyed that. He thought he was proud of it. When the shots were fired and it became deadly and violent, he became more concerned, according to people around him, and yet he didn't really act to do anything. He was AWOL as the commander-in-chief. It took Mike Pence, the vice president, whose own life was under threat at the Capitol, in the basement of the Capitol in hiding, to actually call the Pentagon and try to organize and mobilize a military response.
You also read that Ivanka Trump repeatedly, he was what? He was in the private dining room watching on television?
That's right.
And that he wouldn't take calls from people. Chris Christie, you report, tried to reach out to him, didn't take the call. Ivanka Trump would repeatedly come down to try to get him to do something?
Well, it was really an awkward time because you might remember that as protesters literally broke into the landing near the Senate and lawmakers were scrambling for their lives along with their staff who were barricading themselves away from people chanting for their heads. During that time, the president actually tweeted something criticizing Vice President Pence. Eventually that came down. But Ivanka was being asked by the chief of staff, Mark Meadows, to please come down here. Let's get your dad to say something, to call off the dogs, essentially. Ivanka went back and forth between her second floor office, back and forth multiple times at Meadows' request, trying to get it right, essentially, with the president, with her father. And many people told us different ways that she was described that day, and not extremely forceful at first, but she was also compared to the stable pony to come in and calm the racehorse. She was her father's stable pony.
Again, we've seen, we showed the video of, the peace-loving folks full of love being ushered into the Capitol, and, you
hugging and kissing.
Right. I mean, we have the video, of course, and we've all seen what the reality was. I mean, this is what they were facing. This is not Capitol Police officers ushering them in and even in the videos that we did see that, it was to kind of hold back the line by falling back because they were outgunned, outmanned.
That's absolutely right.
Were you surprised that he is still sticking to this? I mean, clearly this is a conversation he has at Mar-a-Lago around dinner tables, when he crashes weddings on the golf course. This is what he talks about nonstop.
You know, and it's not just this topic where he spewed lies to us in our interview. We talked to him for 2.5 hours, and on almost every topic, it was this sort of alternative reality playing out in his head. He brought up the fact, according to him, that he won the state of Arizona. Well, we all know he lost the state of Arizona. He lost the state of Arizona, in part, according to some of his advisors, because he was attacking John McCain, a hero in that state. And he brought it up and attacked John McCain in our interview. And it's just, again and again, he would say things that weren't true as if they were true, as if when you enter Mar-a-Lago and sit there in the lobby, you're in a different universe with a different set of facts.
It is Thursday, the 22nd of July of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Well. I was felled by allergies yesterday. I had postnasal drip all day. I was sneezing. It was not fun. And so I hope that I am over it somewhat. I may sound still a little scratchy, but that's because I sound a little scratchy. How are you? We are here ready to start our day, as we do every day here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And as I'm preparing for the day and the show and getting the radio station in order, going through correspondence, I noticed that YouTube flagged yesterday's show. Yes, that would be Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, for apparently spreading medical misinformation. And I was trying to figure out what it was that I was spreading. And I thought, well, because I had the tete-a-tete between Rand Paul and Fauci, was that part of it? And I thought maybe that's what it was. And then I was thinking, where within my newsread or even in my ramblings? Yeah. We'll get to that in just a moment. But anyway, where would I have said something that, as they stated, went against the World Health Organization and some amorphous entity they call local authorities? Now, when I hear local authorities, I want to know, well, where are those local authorities? Are they my local authorities, or are they local authorities in some far-flung nation that has a much more authoritarian and conservative bent than even our own, well, MAGA people? Just saying. And then it occurred to me that I had a Scientific American clip during the break, during their COVID specials, number 11, by the way. And that was the only thing that had anything to do with masks, distancing, vaccines. So they had a breakdown of the science of booster shots. Now, I know the WHO is not suggesting booster shots, but is the mere breakdown of the science of a booster shot enough to say that that is now misinformation? Scientific American? Basically, they're not making it up. They're reading a peer-reviewed study and experiment and the results from the CDC. Please. Okay. YouTube, you're getting a little funny. Once again, I am told, well, it's just the algorithm. Well, who's coding the algorithm? There's always a human behind it somewhere, and their deficiencies will come to the fore, won't they? I think it should be a requirement for every coder to take a humanities class. I don't care what they're coding. CAD. Remember CAD? I loved CAD. Okay, well, we'll overcome this YouTube imbroglio. They just don't want the science out there, whoever they are. And I don't mean YouTube as they. I'm talking about the capital T. All right? Don't fall into the conspiratorial mindset with the capital T, they. That's what I was always told. Okay, I think I shall practice it. What do we have going on in the rest of the world while the Olympics is going on? Jeez, I can't believe it is. You know, they delayed it by a year. You know, you might as well just skip this one and go 4 years later. You know, I don't remember the 1980 Olympics. Well, at least it was for us, the Americans. They still had one. That's right. They still had an Olympics. We just weren't there. And everybody blames, Jimmy Carter. Well, let's just say that I was in training for the 80 Olympics. Not that I would have, prevailed, but I was a pole vaulter. And not a terribly bad one. And my dream was taken away. Well, no, my dream wasn't taken away. I was on to other dreams. I had a lot of dreams. And I was living them out, because that's what you do. Anyway, so we have the Olympics now, and maybe we shouldn't. Boy, I mean, how many bigwigs in the Tokyo Olympic Committee are like being ousted? They just got another one who apparently a decade ago had a stand-up routine and he made jokes about the Holocaust. You don't make up jokes about the Holocaust unless you're punching a Nazi. Okay, and then maybe you might want to modify or moderate what the Holocaust part of that joke might incorporate, because I think maybe that's a little too, I don't know, ghoulish, wrong, immoral, whatever you call it. But yeah, that was exposed or reintroduced into the mindset, because apparently it had never gone away. It's just that people thought, no one will know. Yikes. Okay, so, maybe they shouldn't be having this thing. How many athletes? Oh, this is the other thing. I mentioned it yesterday. Kick people out for smoking weed legally. But don't require the athletes to be vaccinated? Okay. I guess I would be spreading medical misinformation now, wouldn't it? I don't know. I always say, get the vaccine. I was lucky. I have Pfizer, not the Johnson & Johnson. Anyway, get the vaccine. Wash your hands, please. Just because, no one's getting sick at the salad bar doesn't mean you can stop washing your hands. Look, we don't need to wash our hands anymore. No one's getting sick at the salad bar. If I ever heard anybody saying that when I was running the show, I probably would have said, hey, let's step aside. And, wear a mask. That's another thing. I was at the store. I had to go to the store. Had to. And I walk in, and I've noticed that all the signs are down about, the pandemic. When you enter the store, do the social distancing, yada, yada, yeah, wear a mask. All that is down. And I walk in, and I'm like, I'm wearing a mask. I'm the only one wearing a mask. No employees are wearing masks. No customers, not one customer is wearing a mask. And we gave the updated totals from yesterday at overnight. And we're not talking about the weekend totals. We're talking about a daily total increased by 35 infections in our county. And the majority of the county, I got to tell you, is rural. Yeah, there's some, fairly populated semi-urban centers. But to have 30 some odd people get infected in a day, that's still a fairly high percentage off the top of my head. And then we had 5 more deaths. What? And people are pretending it's over. It's not over. And I hope that YouTube doesn't think that that's spreading misinformation by acknowledging that this pandemic continues to kill. And by having, I don't know, immature coders who can't tell what a rhetorical question is. Oh, God. Or, how about this? Simply having the Scientific American give pertinent information from the CDC, JAMA, and all the other peer-reviewed papers and journals. Come on, YouTube, grow up. Boy, I never thought I'd become this taciturn in my old age. Well, you know, the world's burning up around us. In fact, it's okay. I saw the map, and it's okay. We just have fire on all 4 sides of us. Okay, yeah. Caught right in the middle with you. And then people around me are pretending it's not happening. All right. What if it's not? What if it's just a figment of my imagination? All of this tragedy around us. Yeah. These people. I don't know. I thought it was us that we're going to the edges of consciousness. There we go. Maybe we did go to the edge of our conscience also, but our consciousness, and then try to return, and people are a little bent, aren't they? Boy, it was supposed to be us. And look at these people. It's just so sad. They go out and get these like mega yachts, and then they sink them because they don't know how to handle it. Oh, look, I got a big old mega yacht. Well, mega yacht, mega pleasure craft, anything like over 40 feet. Or we'll say 35 to 40, because I've seen some pretty small ones that have a pretty high fly bridge, and I don't know why these people think that they can like putter around in them the way that they do. Jesus, drag races in a high center of gravity craft. Give me a break. Anyway, and then everybody wants to sit up on the fly bridge too. Let's throw it even more out of weight and balance. Then they wonder how come they sink them. Because conspicuous consumption doesn't make you a master of the universe. They think it does, but it doesn't. So don't do it anymore. Don't. Anyway, so no one's wearing a mask, and that was rather troublesome and bothersome. And you can't trust those people, all right? Oh, I got the shots. No, you didn't. You guys have been fighting it every inch of the way. Speaking of which, fighting every inch of the way. I don't know why there's been more visible showings of the Trump flag on trucks, and the American flag. I'm getting a little pissed off about the American flag being coupled with that MAGA flag. That should be a violation with a flag code right there. And I don't care whether it's enforced or not. Somebody ought to do something about this. They will not, I don't know. Yeah. They will not take our stars and stripes. How dare they? How dare they? Yeah. Co-opt everything, and then they say, oh, yeah, well, it's just because you're woke. Oh, I'll take your woke right here and put it under your yoke if you don't cut it out. And I mean that rhetorically. Mr. Coder. Little brat. Jeez. All right. We did a different kind of coding back in the day, and then we had to go off and do other things. Because, the technology wasn't there to make enough money so that some kid coder can go out and buy a 6-digit home in cash. And then somehow lose it, too. I don't understand how that works. But it did. Seen it happen. Don't take a second on that. What are you doing? It's a bank. Is it? Did you not take a humanities class? What's that? Okay, and now they're running not just our world, but our whole universe. Think of that. Skynet this. Oh, my God. What's on the rest of the menu? We do have a curated part of this whole salon. We really do. Well, at the top, that was audio recordings of New York Times reporters Carol Leonnig and Philip Rucker's interview with Trump. Is like listening to Nixon drunk rambling. And I hope not. Well, I'm not drunk, okay? And neither was Trump. They say that Trump wasn't drunk, but I think, and actually, you and I, we all know. We all know that Trump is on something. It could be the effects of the hair dye and the makeup. There could be some sort of, I don't know, mercury or who knows. You never know. There's something going on there, and some people might call it sad. But he's been a pompous rich boy ever since he was, well, a little kid. And on the rest of the menu, a federal investigation found unvaccinated staff are linked to rising nursing home infections and deaths. Oh, and YouTube, this is a CDC study. Is it okay? U.S. life expectancy in 2020 saw its biggest drop since World War II. And massive wildfire smoke from the American West is hurting air quality on the East Coast. See, we're all connected. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Colombian children are learning to identify landmines buried during the country's civil war. And not a moment too soon. And for the first time, Saudi women will stand guard in Mecca during the Hajj. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of the chat room link, across the page, to the left, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it would help so much. It does. If you could afford, say, how about an espresso-type coffee drink? And if you could afford to send those funds our way, we are able then to pay our bills, because we mix that also with the money that we pull out of our own wallets, because we do that. And we pay our bills, we fly under the radar, and we continue resistance broadcasting. Even though Joe and Kamala are doing quite a great job, there is a force arrayed against the good, and you know who we are. So anyway, your generosity has helped us for the past 10 years to pay our bills and fly under the radar and continue this 24/7, 365 endeavor. And we thank you very much for your generosity. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. And we thank Tom for taking the time to do it. Thanks, Tom. If you would follow me on Twitter, you can do so at Justice Putnam, by the way. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and you could just go there. But I try to get the link of that on Twitter and other social media platforms quickly, and sometimes I'm not able to do it very quickly. I apologize. But the show notes and links are a very integral part to this whole multimedia operation. Somewhere there's the overhead projector, remember that? And the mimeograph machine. We are so multimedia. We are. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. Okay, except on YouTube sometimes. They just take it down. Oh, yeah, you had a Scientific American clip. It was telling stuff that some conservative Bible thumper rattlesnake dancer guy had a tongue of fire ice cream social said was against their local authority. Okay, I think that's what's been happening. You know who has learned how to game that algorithm. So we can't really blame it just on the brat coders who never took a humanities class. I think there's some other nefarious actor involved. But that's just me. I don't want to be conspiratorial now. I'm not bringing up the Templars. If you bring up the Templars and the Illuminati, you know they're off the edge. And that was why Trump was so much like Nixon drunk rambling. Except it's worse. Ew. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, by the way. Oh, and on the Thursdays show notes and links, I do have my Metro Shrimp and Grits recipe for your indulgence. Go ahead. Jason Deeren and Ricardo Alonso Zaldivar of the AP bring us this first offering. I hope that the YouTube algorithm doesn't consider this to be medical misinformation. I just hope. Lagging vaccination rates among nursing home staff are being linked to a national increase in COVID-19 infections and deaths at senior facilities and are at the center of a federal investigation in a hard-hit Colorado location where disease detectives found many workers were not inoculated. I like that, disease detectives. The investigation by the CDC of facilities in the Grand Junction, Colorado area raises concerns among public health doctors that successes in protecting vulnerable elders with vaccines could be in peril as the more aggressive Delta variant spreads across the country. Nationally, about 59% of nursing home staff have gotten their shots, about the same as the overall percentage of fully vaccinated adults, but significantly lower than the roughly 80% of residents who are vaccinated in those homes, according to Medicare. And some states have much lower vaccination rates of around 40%. Some policy experts are urging the government to close the gap by requiring nursing home staffers get shots. You know, they did that in France. A mandate the Biden administration has been reluctant to issue. Nursing home operators fear such a move could backfire, prompting many staffers with vaccine qualms to simply quit their jobs. Well, I am sorry. If you can't wash your hands, wear a mask. Social distance when you can, and get vaccinated. You don't have a job. Why is that such a problem? They could tell you how high your bell-bottom pants can be, and you're okay with it. Oh, yeah, I'm getting a paycheck. But you're not going to get vaccinated to not only save yourself, but the people around you. Why are you even there? I don't get it. Do they not get vaccinated for mumps? Do they not get vaccinated for any other number of ills that have befallen our species for how many millennia? And we finally got to the point where we can get safe and effective treatment, more than treatment, but in some cases, I wouldn't call it a cure. But a good leg up on the scourge that's trying to kill us. Jesus, people are taking the side of the virus. Why? To be sure, the vast majority of fully vaccinated people who become infected with the Delta variant suffer only mild symptoms, but older adults may not fully respond to the vaccine, and there's enormous risk of someone coming in with the virus, said Dr. Joshua Sarfestein, Vice Dean of the Public Health Practices at Johns Hopkins. Vaccinating workers in nursing homes is a national emergency because the Delta variant is a threat even to those already vaccinated, he said. The CDC conducted its investigation of Delta variant outbreaks in elder care facilities in Mesa County, Colorado in May and June. The area is a coronavirus hotspot. The agency said it is assisting states and counties throughout the nation as part of the White House's COVID-19 surge teams. Nationally, data collected by CDC show that deaths and confirmed infections among nursing home staff have decreased significantly since vaccinations began in January, but the number of deaths reported among staff have begun creeping up again, fueling new concerns. At one memory care facility in the Grand Junction area, 16 fully vaccinated residents were infected and 4 died. The residents who died were described as being in hospice care with a median age of 93, indicating they were particularly frail. Now, of course, the ghouls on the other side that take the side of the virus will point out that, well, they were in hospice. Yeah, but they died before even they would have in hospice. That's the whole point now, isn't it? The CDC has not released the finding of its investigation publicly, but said it plans to publish the results in an upcoming morbidity and mortality weekly report. The slide was shared with the AP by a person involved in internal deliberations who requested, "Don't name me," because they did not have permission to release the data. Of the 16 fully vaccinated residents infected at the memory care facility, CDC found that 13 developed symptoms described as mild in most cases. The CDC investigated several nursing homes in Mesa County that were experiencing new outbreaks. At one location, described as Facility A, 42% of the staff were still not fully vaccinated, contrasting with only about 8% of residents who had failed to complete their shots. In other words, 92% of the residents and less than 42% of the staff. The CDC found a COVID-19 infection rate of 30% among vaccinated residents and staff at the facility, with residents accounting for the vast majority of the cases. Once again, the elderly are frail, more susceptible to this. Why are they doing this to their charges? Throughout the pandemic, people in long-term care facilities have carried a disproportionate burden of suffering and death, not to mention increased isolation due to lockdowns. It's estimated that nursing home residents represent about 1% of the U.S. population, but account for about 22% of COVID-19 deaths. More than 133,400 people whose lives have been lost. Dobie of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. U.S. life expectancy fell by 1.5 years in 2020, the largest one-year decline since World War II, public health officials said yesterday, Wednesday. The decrease for both Black Americans and Hispanic Americans was even worse, 3 years. The drop spelled out by the CDC is due mainly to the COVID-19 pandemic, which health officials said is responsible for close to 74% of the overall life expectancy decline. More than 3.3 million Americans died last year, far more than any other year in U.S. history, with COVID-19 accounting for about 11% of those deaths. Black life expectancy has not fallen so much in 1 year since the mid-1930s during the Great Depression. Health officials have not tracked Hispanic life expectancy for nearly as long, but the 2020 decline was the largest recorded one-year drop. The abrupt fall is basically catastrophic, said Mark Hayward, a University of Texas sociology professor who studies changes in U.S. mortality. Other problems affected Black and Hispanic people, including lack of access to quality health care, more crowded living conditions, and a greater share of the population in lower-paying jobs that require them to keep working when the pandemic was at its worst. Flackis and Sarah Klein of the AP bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Smoke and ash from massive wildfires in the American West clouded the sky and led to air quality alerts yesterday, Wednesday, on parts of the East Coast as the effects of the blazes were felt 2,500 miles away. Strong winds blew smoke east from California, Oregon, Montana, and other states all the way to the other side of the continent, just like in the Dust Bowl. Haze hung over New York City, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. The nation's largest wildfire, Oregon's Bootleg Fire, grew to 618 square miles, just over half the size of Rhode Island. Fires also burned on both sides of California's Sierra Nevada and in Washington State and in other areas of the West. The smoke blowing to the East Coast was reminiscent of last fall, when large blazes in Oregon's worst wildfire season in recent memory choked the local sky with pea soup smoke, but also affected air quality several thousand miles away. So far this year, Seattle and Portland have largely been spared the foul air. Lucky for us for now. Well, that brings us to our break, and we'll have somewhat of a short one. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Colorectal cancer is the number 2 cancer killer of men and women in the United States, but it is preventable. Early on, colorectal cancer typically has no symptoms. It starts with a precancerous polyp or abnormal growth in the colon, which can be removed without surgery. Several tests are available to find these polyps, so they can be removed before they turn into cancer. Screening also finds colorectal cancer early when treatment works best. Recommended screening for adults at average risk begins at age 50 and continues until age 75. Learn about screening test options and find out which tests are covered by insurance. Talk to your healthcare provider about when you should be screened and discuss the best tests for you. For more information about colorectal cancer prevention, please visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
An old political truism notes that where there's a will, there are 1,000 won'ts. And what a hurricane of won'ts swirled out of Washington's power centers in March to pummel Joe Biden. Corporate lobbyists and their congressional hirelings howled at him for declaring that he would seek a tax increase on corporations to pay for the essential overdue job of repairing and expanding our nation's antiquated, dilapidated infrastructure. Blowhard Mitch McConnell, the GOP Senate leader, blustered that poor corporate America should not be singled out to bear this burden. But wait, Mitch singled out the corporate giants in 2017 to receive a massive cut in their tax rate. So even with a slight increase now, they'll pay much less than regular people. Also, the giants worm loopholes in the law to cut their taxes further. Indeed, 55 of the biggest, most profitable corporations paid zero in U.S. income taxes last year. As Bernie Sanders points out, if you paid $120 for a pair of Nike shoes, you paid more to Nike than it paid in federal income taxes over the past 3 years, while it made $4 billion in profits. Mitch and his fellow hypocrites cynically profess that they support restoring America's infrastructure, but, he says, asking our corporate political funders to pay more is not going to get support from our side. So who do they want to pay for it? You, working people and the poor. Senator Roy Blunt, a Missouri Republican and a leader of Mitch's team, points to putting more user fees on drivers and adding taxes on consumers as the way to go. This is Jim Hightower saying, to see a list of other major corporate scofflaws who have been pocketing billions in profits yet paying zilch for the upkeep of America, go to the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, itep.org. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is brought to you by the Lowdown Happy Hour, now live streaming on Facebook from the Chat and Chew Cafe. So grab a libation, pull up a virtual chair, and join our freewheeling conversations with political mavericks, musical agitators, and kick-ass grassroots groups. The Lowdown Happy Hour will connect you to good trouble activists who are building people power across America. Get the lowdown at hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1916. That was the day a bomb rocked the Preparedness Day Parade in San Francisco, killing 10 and injuring at least 40. The Chamber of Commerce and the newly formed Law and Order Committee organized the parade to shore up support for war production and eventual entry into World War I. But isolationist sentiment in San Francisco remained strong. Anti-war activists prepared pamphlets and protests for the march. Many trade unionists were opposed to entry into the war. Some considered the parade a response to the combative longshoremen strike raging on the docks for weeks. San Francisco had been a strong union town for years, known for strikes and labor disputes. 1916 was an election year, and already the city had been rocked by a number of strikes. Business interests launched an open shop campaign and began targeting labor radicals. They found their scapegoats in labor leaders Tom Mooney and Warren Billings, who were framed and convicted for the bombings. Journalist Carl Nolte points out that Mooney and his assistant had been trying to organize workers at the city's largest streetcar company, United Railroads. He notes their convictions were based on perjured testimony and doctored evidence. Incredibly, one of the prosecution's star witnesses wasn't even in town that day. But the convictions served to vilify labor militants as terrorists. Fremont Older, editor of 2 local newspapers, discovered the frame-up evidence. He and many others, including Upton Sinclair and Clarence Darrow, campaigned for years to free the 2 men. They were finally released after 22 years in 1939. The actual bombers were never found, though some have speculated that anarchists of the Galleanist movement were likely responsible.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 57 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of around 90 or so. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Sunny skies should prevail throughout the day. Clear skies overnight with lows in the mid to upper 50s. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10. And mainly sunny skies tomorrow. Highs in the mid 90s. We're creeping up once again. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have increased now to 120,074 people, with 151 deceased. Increases in both categories, and people do not want to wear a mask. Keep your mask on, folks. Grass pollen is rated as moderate right outside the window here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index is good for the region at 23 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is very high, though at 8. So the angle of the sun is bringing it down ever so incrementally. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.09 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 75%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by, brought to us by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsources from around the world. London is 83 and sunny. Paris is 83 and sunny. Rome is 93 and fair. Kyiv is 76 and fair. Kabul is 80 degrees and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 80 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 80 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 54 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 53 and fair. And New York must be a smoky 75 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Anonymous staff at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I always like it when we have these heartening stories about children learning about their environment and how to survive. A nonprofit organization is teaching children in rural Colombia how to identify landmines placed near their communities by armed guerrilla groups during the country's long civil war. Since 2013, the Halo Trust Foundation has created programs to deactivate anti-personnel mines in regions across Colombia. So far, they have been able to declare 900 free of mines. They also teach children and their communities about the risks of the mines, how to spot them, and what to do if they find one. Younger people do not know how to correctly identify explosive artifacts. This has always been and still is a concern, said community leader Juliana Arango. According to the Halo Trust Foundation, since 1990, around 12,000 people have been injured or died in Colombia because of undetonated explosives.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Mohammed Ben Mansour of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Inspired by her late father's career, Mona decided to join the military in the first group of Saudi women soldiers to work in Islam's holiest sites, where they are helping secure the Hajj annual pilgrimage. Since April, dozens of female soldiers have become part of the security services that monitor pilgrims in Mecca and Medina, the birthplaces of Islam. Dressed in a military khaki uniform with a hip-length jacket, loose trousers, and a black beret over a veil covering her hair, Mona spends her shifts roaming in the Grand Mosque in Mecca. I am following the steps of my late father to complete his journey, standing here at the Grand Mosque in Mecca, the holiest place. To serve the worshippers is a very noble and honorable task, said Mona, who declined to give her family name. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has pushed through social and economic reforms as part of plans to modernize the conservative Muslim kingdom and attract foreign investment under a diversification drive. Under his reform plan, known as Vision 2030, the Crown Prince lifted a driving ban on women, allowed adult women to travel without permission from guardians, and granted them more control over family matters. But the reform plan has been accompanied by a crackdown on dissent, including on women's rights activists. And those women remain in jail and tortured still. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. And yes, we deserve it. We do. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.